So let's talk about the payment for garden waste being taken away, the issue of why it's being charged for. The majority of councils here in Kent, as you just heard the list, are now charging you. I wonder if you think it's fair. Well, let's talk to Paul O'Brien. Paul is the Chief Executive of the Association for Public Service. Paul, is it inevitable that all councils are going to move towards a charge for not just this, but other things that are a discretionary offer to their residents?
Well, it's certainly looking that way when you consider the scale of the cuts that have taken place since 2010. Then it's been fairly overwhelming for local authorities, and at the same time a huge rise in demand for other statutory services like social care, adult social care and children's services. Then, to keep the discretionary services going, I think it's inevitable that some local authorities will raise a small charge to cover those.
When a council introduces something like this, do they have to consult, or is it something that they can just among themselves, the councillors, vote on? What is the decision-making process?
They can make that decision themselves, but again, I would say that councils don't make that decision lightly, and of course they will look at all of the factors that are taking place within their area, and they will look at the priorities for the local area as well. But like I say, it's some very difficult decisions.
That's going to be very, very difficult. We just lost our guest. Let's see if he's come back. The line just disappeared. Are you still there, Paul?
Yes, I am.
Oh, sorry. Our line just broke up for a second. So we're talking about difficult decisions, and you're asking us to empathise with local authorities. In Kent, the vast majority of the local authorities are now charging for this. Does there become a tipping point when it becomes easier for the next council, I guess, to say, well, we're going to charge, because at the moment we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 authorities already charging, 2 more proposing to, which leaves only 3 where it's still free. So presumably it becomes easier and easier if you're the next local authority to say, well, Thanet's doing it, Dartford's doing it, Ashford's doing it, why don't we do it?
I don't think it's an easy decision for any local authority to make, to introduce charges in any area. I think, as I said earlier, it's some really difficult decisions they're faced with, about vulnerable children and adults, about funding those services, and at the same time, you've got a discretionary service here where people do have some options about composting themselves or taking that garden waste along to a household waste recycling centre. But let me just jump in there a moment. There are some people who don't have that option, and that's where this might start to look like a charge on the elderly, the infirm, those who can't afford to run a car. Because those people who do run a car or could get on with it themselves can make that choice, but some people can't make that choice, can they? That's true, and local authorities do have some discretion round about that type of situation, and I would get in touch with my local authority if you found yourself in a really difficult situation. But for the majority of the public, if you think about it, the average cost that we identified, something like £34, just over £34 I think it was, and when you break that down to a weekly charge, it's about 66p a week. That's less than a quarter of the cost of a cup of coffee in a coffee shop.
The difficulty is, of course, where something has been free previously, and we talk about all sorts of things like that here in Kent, like the charges for children for their bus passes, which have been massively subsidised. People don't, it's hard to swallow, isn't it? When, as individuals, it might be hard for the councils, but individuals have lived through austerity as well, and I guess they feel that these things are being forced onto them.
Absolutely, and I understand that. I think councils understand that fully. It's a very difficult choice for councils to make, but they are balancing very difficult priorities here, and there is, I think, if you said to the average member of the public, about looking after vulnerable children or adults, disabled children, funding services for them, or introducing a small charge for garden waste, I think the public would understand that.
That's an interesting either or. I wonder if it really is like that in reality. Paul, let's ask people that question and see if they do think it is as black and white as that. That's Paul O'Brien. Thank you very much to him for joining us, Chief Executive of the Association for Public Service. I mean, when you are asked, put that point to somebody, of course,